Good morning. Thank you all for being here this morning. We are waiting for one or two more board members to join us, and then we will start our meeting. Good morning. We will go ahead and call our MAPS 4 Citizens Advisory Board meeting for June 1st, 2023 to order. The first thing I'd like to do is welcome our new board member, Chelsea Banks, who is joining us representing Ward 2. Previously, Allie Shin, occupied by Allie Shin, and Allie had to unfortunately resign so that because of her job responsibilities, but made room for Chelsea, and we're thrilled to have you join Citizens Advisory Board. So thank you for being here. So moving on to items for individual consideration. We have approval of the minutes of the May 4th, 2023 Citizens Advisory Board meeting. They were included in your packet. If anybody has any changes, corrections, questions, if not, I'd take a motion in a second. Please cast your votes.
I say yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm having a problem.
Oh, that's all right. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to item 2B, receive the MAPS 4 monthly financial report ending April 30th, 2023. Mr. Todd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you said, for the period ending April 30th, on the revenue side, for the month, $11,933,777. Fiscal year, $122,463,506, and total of $383,616,126. Want to point out that we still remain 1.6% above projections. Then on the expenditure side for the month, $37,413,800. Fiscal year, $44,202,712, and total of $145,444,878. And that large amount for the month has to do with transfer of funds to the investment fund.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Todd or the report? Okay. Not, I take a motion in a second to receive the report. Please cast your votes. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 2C, design update presentation on the Maps 4 Diversion Hub.
We like to periodically bring you updates on the projects that are in design. This was seen by the subcommittee, very pleased with where this is, and thought would bring it here to this board so that everyone here could see where we are with the diversion hub. So members of the Reese Architecture team is here today to show you what they've been up to.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Great, thank you guys. It's great to be back in this room and be dry. The last time I was here was opening day for Festival of the Arts, and I was soaked to the bone. So I'm Farouk Kareem, Director of Design with Reese, Rachel Bundy, Senior Project Manager. We also have Megan and Sydney with Diversion Hub, and Austin Maiden with Arnall Family Foundation, and our wonderful project manager, Jim Shepard. We're just going to give you a quick update. Rachel's going to start and kind of walk through and start with the site. So.
All right. So the location for the Diversion Hub project, the property has been purchased and generously provided by the Arnall Foundation. It's located just in between Linwood Boulevard and 6th Street. It's also bounded by Klein Avenue and Ellison, so it'll be just west of Western and Classen Boulevard. As far as the site goes, the Diversion Hub owns that entire just over 2-acre site. We are planning for a 2-story building to be situated centrally located in the site. The Diversion Hub does want to separate the client and public parking from their staff parking. So we have the staff parking lot on the west side, we have the client and more public facing parking on the east side. Per the specifics of the SPUD for this property, you cannot have any access, any inlets or outlets on Linwood Boulevard, and so all of the access will be either primarily east of the property or west of the property there.
One other thing that we'd point out that we think is kind of interesting and fun, and I think it'll be more apparent when you see the outside of the building, the second floor is twisted on an angle from the first floor. That responds to the Linwood diagonal and how it sort of transverses across, but also, we thought it was a great metaphor for what's happening in the building. People are kind of taking a turning point in life and hopefully going somewhere positive, and so I think sometimes it's fun to have something, a little meaningful in the design and certainly in the planning, so.
Mm-hmm. Just a couple other items on the site. The city already has plans for parallel street parking along Linwood, so we've incorporated that into the site plan. And then also there is a bike lane that's planned to go along Linwood, and there's also a bus route currently running along Linwood Boulevard. All great ways to access the Diversion Hub for their clients. In general, we just included a slide about the Diversion Hub, about their mission, their purpose. We just always want to keep, their vision and their purpose in mind as we're working on the design for the project. And currently, we have a 2-story office building. It's planned to be just a little over 33,000 square feet. In addition to housing the staff for the Diversion Hub, there are a variety of partners that they work with, and there will be workspaces for those partners within the building. We have completed the site survey at this point. We've collected the soil samples and received the geotechnical report, and we've confirmed that site detention will not be required on the site. This slide gives you just kind of a summary of who's going to be located on each of the floors. In general, I'll flip to the floor plans as well. In general, the first floor is going to be almost entirely dedicated to client spaces. There's a public lobby space, some large training spaces that both Diversion Hub, their clients, and some outreach programs can have access to and use. In the southeast corner, there's an alternative courts area, which also provides local client services there. The west portion of the building has some building services, but also where they collect donations and store donations for Diversion Hub clients that can be used. And really at the center of this floor, at the heart of the floor, will be all of the client meeting rooms, client conference rooms, and just the spaces that they're primarily meeting and working with their clients. Second floor is all staff and support spaces for the staff. So we have a centrally located stair so the staff can very quickly and easily get down to the client space and pull them in from the lobby to meet with them. But that was also one of the desires of the Diversion Hub, just making sure for safety for their staff and everything. They did want to have separated areas for their staff work areas and the client meeting spaces.
So we've worked really hard to ensure that there's volume in the building. On other diversion type projects that we've worked on, we know that, the space is important, the way it feels, having lots of daylight and natural light's really important. And we have kind of a, squarish footprint. So, you'll see in subsequent presentations how we're going to accomplish bringing natural light into the building. We also felt that it was extremely important that when you have a two-story building, we foster this sense of collaboration and community within the staff and also the people that they're serving. So there are actually 4 points in the floor where you can see from the second floor to the first floor and vice versa. That also allows daylight and natural light to kind of come through and filter into the building. So the interior spaces are in the process of being developed, but that's, again, something that you got to start thinking about now as we're going through the planning process.
Yep. And before we move on to the exterior imagery, just in general, some of the things that Diversion Hub, the priorities for them and things that were important to them. And part of it is just room for growth, room for expansion. This is going to allow for more client interactions, client meeting spaces, so they'll be able to serve, and help more citizens. And then also just the addition of that alternative court space is a space that they don't have functions like that in their building now. And so just expanding their services and creating room for growth and flexibility are some of the charges that we've been given as part of the design.
So we have a few exterior images, and we're going to go through this quickly, but I think that going back to the slide that kind of talks about Diversion Hub, especially when we do a project like this that does the kind of work that they do, it's important for us to spend time in their facility, to connect with them, to understand the people that they're serving. And so, it really, creates a sense of ownership for us. And so, all of that is woven into every aspect of what we've done, especially on the outside. Rachel's going to talk about the budget here in a moment, but we had a great work session yesterday, kind of working through some value engineering. You can certainly ask the Diversion Hub team, but I think, the project is continuing to get better. We like it when our clients push us. We like it when we have context and problems to solve and work through. So the building is continuing to evolve. It's continuing to get better. This is the front side of the building, kind of looking to the southwest. Again, kind of another shot of that front of the building. One of the things that we are looking at is kind of rethinking the glass. The key word here is value. And so we've reduced the amount of glass on the outside of the building, which you'll see again in a subsequent presentation, but we have not, we have not reduced the amount of vision glass into the building. So, this is really a fun process, but I think you can see the building is going to be very interesting. We want it to be warm. We want it to be friendly. We want it to be not institutional. We also want to make sure that it's, a great anchor in the neighborhood as that neighborhood continues to develop, using quality materials, but also being very mindful of the budget and using materials that we think are going to hold up well over time.
So as far as where we're at on the cost estimate review, we've been working with the cost estimator and just kind of working on updating as we continue to make progress on the design and the program. The last cost estimate that came in which I believe I received it the day I was putting this presentation together. But it did show that we're a little bit over budget. We're about $878,000 over budget. Looking at the budget, MAPS has contributed the $14,023,400. There are some contributions that the Arnall Foundation has committed to as well. So we've included that $1 million commitment there. Arnall Foundation has also made a generous commitment for the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So we're pulling that outside of the construction budget. Then in the center column, you can see the current estimate is at $15,901,000. So we do have a deficit there highlighted in yellow. And as Farouk mentioned, we're continuing to develop the design. We're working with Diversion Hub on that design. And some of the things we presented to them yesterday are, these are ways we're working to bring the costs down. We'll be working with the cost estimator on an updated cost estimate starting late next week, and looking ahead at just kind of timeline and schedule. The preliminary report is due to MAPS and Diversion Hub on Monday, June 26th. So the goal at that point is to have a complete report, an updated cost estimate with the project in budget. So there will be some slight modifications, I think, to the design intent you're seeing today, but the goal is to keep the program space, keep the square footage, and really keep like the look and feel of the building overall without.
And I think the team was really excited by what they saw yesterday. There was one significant change, at least to us, that they didn't even notice had changed. So I think that's always a great thing, that, we're being very careful but also aggressive in making sure that we get within the budget. So.
So are there any questions at this time?
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify about the budget deficit. Did I understand correctly? You had said in the subcommittee meeting that it would not be a cut to programs. It would just be a cut to construction materials.
The goal at this time, we believe that we can get it within budget without cutting out square footage or those program requirements.
Gotcha. I just
And that
wanted-
would be one of the last things we would want to cut. So what we're looking at is cost of materials, exterior materials, interior materials, can we bring the cost down? One of the things that was driving it was the expanses of glass and curtain wall. And so we're reducing the amount of curtain wall in the building. There's a storefront glazing system that is less expensive than a curtain wall system. And so really what we're looking at right now, we're taking a hard look at like the exterior design and the materials and some of the sizes and spaces of the volume. So like that spine, we could reduce the height and reduce some cost without cutting out square footage. of
Gotcha,
program.
great. Thank you.
Of course.
Other questions?
Yes. I like where this is heading. Where's Linwood versus where this image, like where is this facing?
So that sidewalk just to the right is going to be the sidewalk that runs along Linwood. So this view is facing, it's like you're facing southwest, and I'll go kind of around the building again. Where that bike is would be they're headed east on Linwood. You're now facing west. This is the back side of the building, which is at 6th Street. So here you're standing at 6th Street, basically facing Linwood, kind of continuing to wrap around the building. And then here it's as if you were on Linwood headed, that bike is still headed east there.
So James, the first floor primarily sits parallel and perpendicular to Linwood and the surrounding streets, but that second floor, as you can see, is rotated, and as that kind of comes down and engages the ground, I think it just adds some interest to the site and to the building, and it's kind of a fun architectural feature.
Was there a slide earlier that had like
The configuration,
Yeah.
the site.
And I think one thing that was confusing to a couple people in the subcommittee is signage is on the building in 2 spots.
Yeah, so currently we're showing the Diversion Hub logo so that you could see it if you were approaching from Linwood from the east or from the west. We're having some continued conversations about that because there's the site, right? Here's our site plan. Because we have the 2 parking lots, because one's public, one's staff, we'll need to make sure that, you know, that it's clearly identified the front
Which
entrance
entrance.
of the building, which parking lot you should go to. I mean, I think for the parking lot, we'll need to use some, you know, signage and wayfinding for that. And then we're, you know, we're looking at the design of the entry just to make sure that it's clear where the main entrance is.
At this stage of the project, it's kind of like you're testing things, like the locations of the signage. The staff entrance is at the southwest corner of the building, so opposite the public entrance. And so, you know, we wanted to make sure we create a nice, safe staff entrance. But one of the things that we also talked about yesterday was perhaps using some color at that main entrance, or maybe even a wood look material, so that it just sort of highlights and emphasizes that main entrance.
Okay. This image is helpful to me of everything I've seen. So just to clarify, on that north corner over there, where it's like solid up, is that where the diversion logo, is that where that is?
So we've proposed, how do you do the point? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
I
a
don't
pointer
think
will
Okay.
get it, I don't know.
So,
So top right is one location, and then top left, where it kind of angles,
Yes.
is another location. So really, the front of the building fronts onto kind of Linwood, but also Decline. And so, because you're approaching,
So this would be the public parking lot?
that's the public parking lot.
and that's the main entrance. And then we had shown the second logo, you know, we talked about, well, if someone's approaching from Linwood from the east, you know, you want to make sure they know it's the building. But then we've heard some of the comments, you know, that maybe that's confusing for the entrance.
Right.
So I think those will be some continued conversations that we have.
So, can we go back to the slide that showed the giant parking spaces?
Yeah.
Some of you probably already know where I'm heading with this, but my challenge back, as you all are looking at revising this, you know, Linwood is a boulevard, as you all are already very well aware, historic, old, ignored. And its revitalization, I think there are a couple projects already underway that are opening, and it's where the cool cat thing is that's happening, the cat cafe. Right?
Yes.
Is that in that area?
Yeah.
Some people were looking at me like, what? No, I saw OKC talk. I think however this goes in over there, it needs to anticipate a boulevard which is pedestrian oriented. And I think that's a huge challenge in terms of, you know, I'm on a tear right now thinking about this history. I think one of the things I really dislike is putting parking in front of buildings, because it signals to everybody you gotta drive here. I just like that old grandpa having the store front and then living above sort of stuff, you know, what Capitol Hill looks like in a lot of ways. So I'm concerned about this parking over here on the side of fronting Ellison, just having like that be so close to Linwood like
Right.
that. And then less concerned about the other side, but I just think having parking spaces, you know, prioritized along Linwood is something I challenge you all to kind of go back and really think about this as a boulevard. Like, I have found myself in recent years, as I've been thinking about Classen, you know, really taking seriously the boulevard part of it, going so far as like looking up the definitions historically of what a boulevard is intended to serve. So that'd be kind of my challenge back, would be to think about how can this building be something that someone walking along that boulevard feels is accessible. So this truly becomes part of that street. Related to the parking lot, and I was just thinking about this yesterday when I went to Ace Hardware on 23rd and Penn. I mean, truly the words punishing and oppressive come to mind when I think about walking across the parking lot at 23rd and Penn to go to Ace Hardware or Walmart or anything there. Just black asphalt, not a single tree in that parking lot. I mean, it is, I don't know about y'all. I just think truly that is a top 5 horror to me, is walking across parking lots like that. And I think people who are in these vulnerable states, who are on the road to recovery, anything that makes this feel those words, punishing and oppressive, in July, in August and September, that'd be my other challenge back, is the landscaping. And I don't think the landscaping needs to just be, you know, something along the sidewalks. I think we really need to think about what someone who is arriving in an automobile, what is that experience getting out of it? What about the person walking from these sidewalks through these parking lots to access this building? And so, yeah, I just would really challenge everyone to really think about where parking is. And quite frankly, why is there even parking on either side of this building when it could all be behind it now that I'm looking at it? So
there are, first of all, I appreciate those comments. We have had pretty lengthy conversations about Linwood because there are a great deal of their clients who don't necessarily have private transportation. And so, you know, the fact that this is on a bus route, the fact that there's a bike lane planned for Linwood, you know, making sure that we do have pedestrian access, you know, around the entire perimeter of the site, those were all important points for us. We will continue to discuss kind of the site layout. There's a number of things that we looked at with the site layout, and we had looked at some different site configurations. They do want the staff parking separated from the public parking for safety reasons, so that is part of what's driving the separate parking lots. They do want some room for expansion on the site, and so we did, that's part of the reason we left, you know, to the south of the building available for some future expansion. We had looked at, you know, I know we had looked at a concept that had the building more like fronting along Linwood, with at least the staff parking behind it. And there were, you know, there were a number of things I think that they still wanted to keep accessible as far as donations on that side of the building. But we certainly we will take those comments back and continue to look at it and analyze. We are really trying to think through, this is not a landscape plan here, but we are trying to think through the landscaping, especially at the front of the building, you know, where they're entering the building. You know, there's some canopy and landscaping there. We understand sometimes they're going to be waiting outside, you know, smoking and things like that. So we're looking at the areas that they'll be waiting outside of the building at times, and the entrance and approach to that building. But I think the other thing we can definitely do is take a hard look at like the landscaping in particular along Linwood.
And when we have been discussing all those things, and I will say, you know, I think we felt like one of the best ways, and we did have conversations about, you know, the amount of parking, but I think one of the best ways to mitigate a large parking area is to split it up and to create smaller pods or pockets of parking that you can landscape in and around heavily. So, but those are all great comments and things that we have discussed and are currently discussing with the project team. So, again, appreciate that. So.
I appreciate that. I'll revise my comments upon further inspection about when I said put all the parking behind the building, because 6th Street also, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's.
Yeah, and that was I was going to say, one of the things that I appreciate about the design, and I know y'all are still working on it, is there wasn't a really ugly, I mean, all 4 sides of the building, it didn't look like there was necessarily a back. So I did appreciate that Linwood and 6th both appeared to have attractive sides of the building. Like,
And if there is a back, that's the back of the building.
Yeah.
That's where the mechanical room is, that's where the
Yeah.
service is. So, but it doesn't look like that, so.
right. A lot to consider.
Thank you
Any-
guys very much.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Yes. Yes, you have to turn it on.
Okay, so back on that previous one that James was mentioning, so everything that was in the negative white space, is that all potential landscaping to be determined later down the road? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And we do have a landscape architecture team member, and, you know, we've had a lot of conversations, again, about certainly the north side, but, you know, just thinking about how people are approaching the building, what it feels like up against the streetscape, making sure that the building is close enough to the street you know, because I think that's one of the things that we want it to feel more urban and walkable, and the further we pull the building away from the street, the further away you get from that, so. But the landscape has a lot of development to come, and you'll see more of that in subsequent presentations, so.
My current just thought process looking at this, the diversion hub being very specifically a place for people to heal and transition from a very punish-oriented state of being, is that in this site plan, there's more prioritization for where cars are gonna be than where people will be. So thinking about, you know, how we're literally divvying up, and I understand the building will be 2 stories and these things, but I think it's really imperative to create outdoor spaces that aren't just, I put trees here, but are actual spaces people can exist in that are, you know, benches, whatever it might be, just places to exist beyond just I'm walking and getting to the building. So I just am seconding where James is at, of this parking seems very overwhelming from a position of, you know, even if you add some trees to kind of get them not to be the most visible thing, it still seems like in the drawings and in the entire plan, the prioritization for cars over humans is pretty obvious.
We'll continue to look at that. Part of what's driving, you know, the larger parking lot is for the staff, and that was really the count that they felt like they needed to be at for growth so that all of their staff would have parking on site. But I think we just have to continue to
But I
look
think
and
to
analyze.
your point, though, there are really 3 main locations that are going to be more people-focused, so the northeast, northwest for public and staff, or public and clients, and then that southwest corner is gonna be developed around that staff entrance, and there's actually an outdoor staff area on the 2nd floor off of the break room, so they can go outside even from the 2nd floor. So, again, there will be a lot more development to come, so.
We'll make sure and bring progress on
Yeah.
the landscaping for discussion next time.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Great. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, all right.
Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to item 2D, construction update, presentation of the MAPS 4 Fairgrounds Coliseum.
Similarly, since we have 2 change orders on the agenda today, wanted to bring you an update on the construction, a real quick update on the construction of the Coliseum. And Travis Pauley is here from Populous.
Thank you
All
for being
right,
here.
thank you. I caught a hint in there to be speedy. So happy to be here to give you guys an update on the construction and some of the changes that have taken place over the last few months. As you all may remember, we started construction on this project around the beginning of the year. And if you'll recall from some of our design presentations, we're kind of phasing this construction in 4 different phases. The first one is in the bottom right there, where we're taking down that front portion of Norwick, where the new Coliseum is going to overlap it to make room for the Coliseum. The second phase is, of course, the construction of the Coliseum, which you see in the upper right. Third phase is the demolition of the Norwick, and the 4th phase is the area where the Norwick existed, the finish out of the show office and some of the site work there. So just a quick reminder, so we can see where we planned on and where we are. That was prior to the project. This is on May 10th, so just a couple weeks ago. You can see that portion of the Norwick has been cleared out. Phase 1 is essentially complete, minus a few minor things. I'll zoom in here a little bit closer for you. The plan is actually overlaid there, so you can see really how this is starting to lay out. A lot of earthwork going on, foundation work, piers. You can start to see some of those foundations coming in at the front of the building over on the right side, as well as around the actual arena. The arena wall starting to go in, and just a ton of underground utility work and foundation work going on out there right now. As we zoom into the site, this is a week or 2 ago. We are in the middle of drilling piers throughout the site. This site has 185 piers on it. They are just about complete with it. I think they're going to wrap them up next week. So the pier drilling has gone excellent. It's better than anybody expected out there on this site. So that was good news. And we're starting to go vertical, as you can see. Columns are starting to go up. We're starting to put rebar up and pour some of these columns. That's in the we call it Quad C, but on the upper right-hand side there, you'll see a little site map that'll show you kind of where we're looking in relation to the project as a whole. This is in that same area. This is where a lot of our utilities come into the site. You can see a lot of underground utility work. This was the week after we got so much rain, or one of the many weeks after we got so much rain recently. So a little bit wet out there, but a lot of good underground utility work going on. And you can see some of those bases to those columns as well right there. As we go around the site, this is the actual foundation for the arena wall. If you'll recall, the bleachers in this arena are raised up, and the actual arena sits down below. So that's that arena wall that will go around. So we're really starting to take some shape here and see how this thing is going to lay out. This is looking right at that front corner of the building. You can see the arrow back at the north. So this is a really neat shot, I always think, because you can really get a perspective of where this is going to sit and how big really that space is between this and the north. So if you're looking right over on the right side of this is where that inset will be, where your front doors will be, and this is that corner where it'll start to cut back. This is finishing out the pad work right along the Norick. So they're basically working from the front door back towards Norick. So this pad has actually been completed since this picture was taken a couple weeks ago. They just completed all the pad work this week. So that's kind of the direction they're working, is from front to back towards the Norick right now. This seems like a very boring picture, but it was an important picture to the fairgrounds, because this is the connection that we had to create between the new north entry to the Norick and the south entry to the Norick. So as you recall, the main entry used to be right there where we took it off, and we had to create some sort of connection and connect those levels and everything between those two so that they can now use both the north and the south entries. So this has been installed. I was out there during the state basketball tournament. It was full of people. Cheerleaders were waiting to go onto the court, and it was all working really well. So that was very happy to see that that was all working as we had planned and hoped for it to work. This is another one that doesn't seem like much, but it's a big deal to the fairgrounds. This is a big transformer that was out right in the middle of Gordon Cooper Boulevard, in the middle of our building footprint that we had to move. This is what supplies a lot of the power for the actual state fair, the carnival and everything. So it was a critical thing to happen early on so that we could have that all ready to roll when they start preparing this summer for the fair. Now I'm going to talk about a few of the changes that have happened in the last few weeks. The first one is a change order, the rare change order that we're actually excited to bring you. And then I've got another change order after that. But this first one is a value engineering change order. When this thing bid, you'll all recall that it came in over what we expected for the budget. And one of the first things that MAPS tasked us to do is try to scour this project anywhere we can find some extra dollars and cents and find any savings we can get. And so along with Flint Co. and our whole team, Populous and our whole team, we have been spending the last few months going through this thing with a fine-tooth comb, trying to find anywhere where we can find some savings. And we're happy to present some of that we found to you today. So this is a list of all of the VE items that we have come up with. And we are continuing to look, but this is we think, a pretty exhaustive list of everything that we've looked through the project so far. I will go through this, but try not to spend too much time on each one of them, and then afterwards I'll highlight a few of them that actually you can see the physical change that we're going to make, and talk about those in the following slides. So most of them are changes in materials or things like that that you're not really going to see in the drawings or even notice in the project. Our objective and our guidance through this whole thing was that we're not going to sacrifice anything to the project quality-wise, durability-wise, or anything like that for these VEs. So we're really trying to look and see where we can find these dollars that aren't going to affect the project. So starting off on concrete, it's just using a different form of hardener. Instead of a dry shake hardener, we're doing a liquid. We're able to remove a couple light pole bases, which that relates to one I'll talk about later. Earth forming foundations, that's something that the contractor or the sub came to us with and asked if they could earth form the foundations instead of actually form them with forms. We went back to our geotech and asked him to analyze that for us. He did an analyzation and said, yeah, we can do it with the soils that we found out there currently. And so that saved us quite a bit, about a little over 100,000 in concrete work there. The metals is really just using a different primer that saved us quite a bit, and then changing the profile of some of the railing in our egress stairs. Woods and plastics, same, so using some sheathing, a different type of sheathing instead of plywood on those parapets saved us about 20 grand. On finishes, similar, using different structural subsystems for some of our finishes saved us some money. Reducing the metal studs a little bit in a way that we can still keep the same structural stability, but reduce the cost. And then, like on the Norick, we put up some hardy board in the areas where we took off the front facade, and we thought, do we really need to paint those since they're just getting ready to get covered up and come down? No, let's save the $11,000. And then framing, the contractor that's doing the framing was able to do it a little more efficiently than what we had initially anticipated, so they saved some money there. The removable bollards instead of retractable bollards, but that was one that we asked the fairgrounds about if they would be okay doing. Basically at the very front, and I'll show you in an image after this, we had a row of retractable bollards, which are the ones that sink down into the ground with like a push button. We asked them if they'd be okay just doing removable ones, which are ones that you can go manually take out. They actually were kind of happy with that because they said those retractable ones always have maintenance issues over time with ice and snow and dirt and everything else. And so we were able to change to those there. We did some HVAC controls changes that saved us a bit. The lighting, the light poles relate to the one I talked about before. Some of these other ones down here relate to a scope change that I'm going to talk about in the next few slides. Let's see, the only one in there that really doesn't relate to that is that next to last one, the worm flooring in lieu of polylast flooring. That is a type of rubberized flooring that we put in the return alley where all the animals walk. That's a little softer on their feet, and we were able to look at a couple different manufacturers for that, go out and get another bid from a different manufacturer that we felt really confident in, and they came in $100,000 less, so saved a lot there. And the last few on there that I will highlight here, several of these, the deletion of the light poles, the removal of the riding arena, the rock bottom bases, and the deletion of the asphalt parking all relate to the area that is in between the new Coliseum and the Super Barn, where the NORC is coming down. If you'll recall, the intent was always to build what we called at the time a connector building between the new Coliseum and the Super Barn. That was not in this project. So what we had to do essentially was put a placeholder in that place, which was a bunch of asphalt paving. Oh, I put my slides a little bit out of order here, but a bunch of asphalt paving between that, which is seen as the show office and the Coliseum, and we also put a dirt arena area there. The intent there was we had to have something there in case the connector didn't come on board, and we knew we needed to have paving in case they needed to use a temporary connector and put up some sort of tents or something to get from point A to point B. We now know that connector is going to happen. It's not through the MAPS funding. The State Fair has gotten funding through the state to do that project, and so that project is coming on board. It may look something like that right there. That's just a schematic idea. It's kind of ghosted in over the background. But what we realized quickly while doing this is all of that space that we had in between there, all of that asphalt, that dirt arena, we had two really high mast light fixtures in that area. That doesn't need to be part of this project anymore because it would just get torn right out. So essentially we get to take out all of that asphalt paving, that dirt floor. The rock bottom bases are kind of the border that go around that arena that allow the panels to mount into them. So they're part of that arena. And then there's two big high mast light fixtures that you might be able to see on either side of that space there that we had put in as kind of those placeholders. So taking all of those out of there saves us a significant amount, over $500,000, being able to take that out of this project, since all that site work will be done as part of that connector project. So that was a really great evolution in the project there. So all of that comes into about just under $1.2 million that we were able to save on the project. So we're happy to be able to present that to you today. That is that worm flooring example. That's the actual product that we're going to use. It's a rubberized flooring. So those are some of the applications that we've used it in before. Really great product that we feel confident in. That's what we just talked about. So going more into that, here is a kind of a graphical representation of what we're removing there in red. You can see all that asphalt paving comes out, the dirt arena comes out, those two high bay light poles comes out, and then in the front there along Gordon Cooper is where we changed those retractable bollards to removable bollards. So not all the change orders are great ones to present to you. We also had some stuff come up that we didn't expect in the project, so I'll walk through these really quickly. Item 1 here is the structural support for the temporary air handling units that are going in the NORC. So the air handling units that supplied the NORC lobby were all in the area that we took out. We knew that. We tried to we analyzed them during design. They're old and couldn't be repurposed, so we had to put new units into the NORC lobby to supply that whole lobby area. That is all in the project and it always has been in the project. But before we went up to mount them in the existing joists, we did a structural analysis of those joists to make sure that they were strong enough to mount those, and they were not. So we have to add a little bit of support in those joists to mount those air handling units that are going to supply the Newark lobby. Item 2 is a delay cost that happened when we found, if you recall, in the previous changes that you saw, we have found just an enormous amount of undocumented and unforeseen utilities under the site. A bunch of old, empty concrete pipes and things like that. Well, getting those out of the way caused a little bit of delays for our piers getting drilled. And unfortunately, the equipment was already out there to drill them once we found that stuff, so it had to sit out there for a few extra weeks while we waited to get that stuff out of the way to drill the piers. Item 3 is a grease trap interceptor. The inspector that came out and looked at the site wanted a grease trap interceptor under our trash compactor on the exterior. So we were happy to oblige. We put that in there for him, added it to the design, and that's what that is. Abandoned storm sewer removal is another one of those unforeseen items that we found underneath the site. That is one that was north of the site that everybody understood to have been removed prior to this project as part of a previous project. It turns out, I'm sure due to cost savings, instead of removing it, they abandoned it in place. We thought that we could get away with leaving some of that abandoned in place, but as some of these storms rolled in the last few weeks, there's been water coming into those from places that we didn't realize were still connected, and so everybody thought, you know, we don't want to have this thing under this plaza space in the long term, and 20 years down the road, we realize we've got an issue. Let's take care of this and do it the right way now and get rid of this and backfill it and do this right. So that's what that is. Item number 5 is just a slight change in the elevator. So when we design these, we usually use a basis of design elevator, but we never know who's going to get bid, and they all have a little bit different requirements for their structural requirements. The elevator that ended up getting bid had a slightly different embed requirements for their structural supports than design, so that's the addition of those embeds at the elevators. So that all comes to about $153,000. So those two change orders combined for a reduction of just over $1 million, or 0.8% below the original contract amount. All of our change orders to date are a reduction of $820,000, which represent a 0.65% decrease to the original contract amount. New contract amount is $125,655,000. And none of these have changed the completion date of the construction of the Coliseum, which is still set for April 12th, 2025. Quick project look ahead. As you saw in some of those pictures, it is a lot of foundation work, earthwork, and utility work going on out there. So like I said, pier drilling is nearly complete. All of the phase 1 work, besides the air handling units being mounted, are complete. The grade beams and pier caps are ongoing, as well as all the underground utility work, which will continue through July. Elevator and escalator pits are happening right now and will continue through the summer. Those arena wall footings that you saw are starting, and they'll start pouring that arena wall pretty soon this month. Columns will continue. They're continuing on out there. They've got more columns up than what you saw in that picture there now. And the slab will start in June, and then that concourse slab is going to start in July. So we're going to be getting vertical and really getting some space and some feel of how this thing's going to look pretty soon here this summer. So we're all excited about that. That's what I've got for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So first off, I want to thank you for you and your team's diligence in finding those cost savings. We don't always get those good news, so thank you very much for doing that work. Any questions of the presentation? Okay, Kevin, did you have anything for the subcommittee presentation or discussion yesterday?
No, everybody was really pleased with the cost savings. I mean, that was reiterated multiple times, but
Yeah.
that money doesn't go to the diversion hub though, right?
No.
Okay, just making sure Shay understood that.
Yeah, Shay's down here licking her lips, but no. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Okay, so next on our agenda is item 2E. Recommend approval of change order number 3 for the Fairgrounds, MAPS 4 Fairgrounds Coliseum with a decrease of the $1,181,712. If there's no discussion, I'd take a motion in a second. Please cast your votes. You're good. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 2F, recommend approval of change order number 4 for the MAPS 4 Fairgrounds of an increase of $153,653. If there's no questions, I'd take a motion in a second. Please cast your votes. Great, the motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 2G, recommend approval of change order number 2 for the MAPS 4 Downtown Arena Phase 2B retractable seating for an increase of $232,485.48.
Thank you. So this is for the retractable part of the arena, which is the lower, very lowest level seats that retract. I want to point out that half of this change order is just for increased labor, because when we bid this, we told the contractor they had to work around events, but fortunately there's been a lot of events. ASM has been able to add a lot of shows and a lot of things happen at the arena, such that the contractor can no longer finish this by the October deadline. So in order to meet that deadline, they're going to increase crews. There'll be more people down there working, and they'll be working longer hours, possibly weekends, some overtime, things like that. We reviewed their proposal. It's been negotiated. We're very comfortable with the number that's shown on here. The other $132,000 is a laundry list here of items that have just come up as we work on the seats, and some of it is minor things like changing the expanded metal mesh railing to a polycarbonate so that it's easier to see, and adding seats where some camera positions were, adding steps so that when the seats are retracted, you can still come down those aisles and go to the floor. Just some things like that. And yeah, it's over $100,000, but it's a big arena. And when you have a lot of places that you have to do this, it adds up quick. But again, this was negotiated as this change order. We're comfortable with it, and it comes with the recommendation from the subcommittee.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this item? Okay. Not, I take a motion in a second to approve. Please cast your votes. Have we not? Okay. The motion passes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 2H. Recommend approval of architectural services contract with Bacchus Payne Associates Architects, MAPS 4 Clara Looper Civil Rights Center, the vicinity of North Martin Luther King Avenue between East Madison Street and Northeast 24th Street, with a fee of $1,567,000.
So this went through the process that everybody except Ms. Banks has been part of now, the standard A&E selection. Very happy to have Bacchus Payne on board, and this comes with the approval from the subcommittee.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. If not, I'd take a motion in a second to approve. Please cast your votes. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 2I, recommend approval of resolution transferring $663,977 from the MAPS 4 Sales Tax Fund for the MAPS 4 Civil Rights Center Operating Maintenance Fund to the Oklahoma City MAPS Investment and Operating Trust.
Remember that when we added the $100 million to the budget, that each project received a proportional amount, and the civil rights operator asked that their amount, their increase, be allocated towards their operating funds and put in the investment trust. So this is for that, and it's the last installment of that.
Okay, any questions? Okay, none, I'd take a motion in a second. Please cast your votes. Okay, the motion passes, thank you. Moving on to item 2J, recommend approval of amendment number 1 to engineering services contract with Kimley Horn and Associates, MAPS 4 Park Programming for Neighborhoods and Community Parks Master Plan for an increase of $245,100.
This adds two things. So when we put together their contract, we overlooked some specific mentioned parks that were in the implementation plan, and those are specifically community gardens, outdoor basketball and pickleball courts, Booker T. Washington Park, Menace Lake View Park, Northwest Community Center, and the Lake Stanley Draper Placemaking. So this adds those as specific projects into their contract. It also adds 8 additional open house meetings and 14 additional community events. I felt that we needed to continue with the outreach that we had for the parks. That they were very successful, and we've had a lot of compliments, but some of them were done when the weather was not real good. So I wanted to do some more of these meetings to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to voice their opinion and tell us what they want about the parks. So that's what this amendment is for.
Okay, any questions?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm really glad to hear that extension. I mentioned this suggestion I'm about to make right now. I want to say to council staff, maybe a week ago in the Paseo, you know where the Flamingo Tiki has opened. I live right by that, and I came home one day and they had put a simple letter on my door that said, we're a film crew, we're gonna be filming at Flamingo for X amount of time, and that was it. And I was like, oh, that's great. And I would recommend that, I mean, I think it's great we're doing these meetings. I mean, I'm not saying go from the approach we're already taking, but I would recommend that in neighborhoods with these park opportunities, that a simple flyer, we have to meet people where they are, is what I guess I'm saying. I don't think that people, not enough people, are going to be able to attend these meetings. I also don't think enough people are going to the parks. I mean, that's kind of the problem. It's a chicken and the egg, right? Like, until COVID, a lot of people weren't really going to the parks because we hadn't invested in the parks to give them really the reason to go. And so where those QR codes are, maybe some people aren't scanning those, they don't know to scan them. I can tell you from knocking doors during the re-election, we have a lot of seniors who, if you ask them to scan a QR, you know, like, and that's no shade on them. That's no shade. That is just, that's not how they've grown up in that world. So I'm wondering, how do we meet people where they are? And I think short of doing an actual door knocking thing, I think something as simple as like a sheet of paper. I'm not even talking about expensive flyer, door hanger or anything. I'm just, I don't want to get to a place, I guess what I'm ultimately saying here, I'd like to not get to a place where come 2032, as these projects are nearing completion, God willing, and a MAPS 5 is a conversation that we have residents who say, you did what in MAPS 4? I don't ever remember hearing anything about that. And I think parks of every project in MAPS 4 is the one that touches the most people.
Don't forget that we also have online engagement.
Also that, I go back to the seniors, and I go back to, I've told this story before, I have a woman who lives off of 36 near Portland. That woman has a disability. She doesn't use the internet. She doesn't know how to use the internet. I just don't think we can forget that there are other people who they don't live our lives. They just don't, and it's a lot of Oklahomans.
Okay.
Being affirmative and making those outreach. Yep.
And then at least we can say 5-10 years from now, hey, we put letters out or we did whatever, and then it's on them, you know.
Right. Okay. Other comments,
I
questions?
wonder,
Yes.
is there a way to do just like yard signs in each of the parks that has some information? Because I know like realtors, you can leave, you know, your little box with your info on the house. Like if there were a yard sign and then into it, there was a piece of paper that had all the information about how to go online or whatever. That's, I mean, I'm happy to just take a trip and, you know, put the yard signs out at all the parks. Because I wonder how many people don't even recognize, I think about Military Park, which is just hardly even half of a block in the Asian district, but it is still a park. So I wonder how many people don't recognize which parks could actually be up for improvements.
Yeah, we'll take that into consideration. We've also included in the water bills, notice there too. We've done a lot.
Yeah, you have. Well, and I mean, I think those are great suggestions, and I do realize that to some extent we're dependent on, or we are leaning into strong neighborhood associations. My neighborhood association is about to drive me crazy, but they're doing a great job. They're a great job. So, I think to your point, people have different experiences and trying to think about how we can connect with them. But I think the water bill, I've received those notices as well. So.
I will say that if no one has been able, if you haven't looked at this report or seen the number of places that they went with the neighborhoods, with the parks, how many different public events like carnival, you know, like stuff like that, they went to as well. I believe they did an overwhelming job with getting out and getting feedback for the parks. Now, did we get everyone? Of course we didn't. I mean, that's an impossible statistic to reach. But I do think that the way that they were able to rustle down some of those numbers, we got a really good look at every age category, every area across the city. But these are great suggestions too.
Okay, so item 2J, do we have any other comments or questions? Okay.
I'm understanding that we identified additional parks, and that's what the funding increase is. Is that what it is?
So part of it is, and we didn't, the implementation plan had already identified them. We, as staff, overlooked that and didn't include that in their original contract. So this is to make up for that. And then it also includes the additional meetings and outreach.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so any other questions on the item? If not, I'll take a motion in a second. Okay, please cast your votes. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 2K, recommend approval of engineering services contract with Consor Engineers, maps for bike lanes Phase 1A and 1B with a fee of $691,400.
So again, this went through the standard process for A&E selection. Consor was selected for that. We negotiated a fee and, excuse me, and this is for our first group of bike lanes. There was no quorum with the connectivity subcommittee, but those in attendance agreed to send this on to you favorably.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I would just like at some point an update from these folk regarding something I brought up a few months ago in terms of, you know, as we implement these bike lanes that are specifically maps for that we look at not just because we were talking about tier 1 infrastructure in terms of bike, that we look at not just delineators, but actually decorative, you know, those just other opportunities for what protection could look like along the bike routes.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions? Not, I'd take a motion to approve the recommendation. Please cast your votes. You're stuck? You just had to wake it up. Motion passes, thank you. Now moving on to item 2L, recommend approval of amendment number 1 to engineering services contract with Kimley Horn and Associates, Maps for Transit Planned Growth, for an increase of $143,000.
Similar to the Parks Amendment, this is for more outreach meetings. Again, I felt like some of the outreach meetings were during inclement weather. And while we've had really good response, I think that we can always have more. And I just asked the consultant to have 10 more of these outreach meetings, so that this is to pay for that.
Okay, any questions or comments?
Just a comment to say from Dr. Bruner's comment about the neighborhoods. I did dig into this memo, and I just want to commend the outreach. And I also want to commend, as we are talking about the BRTs for the south and northeast side, I think the level of engagement and the level of like metrics we are using to determine these routes, already anticipating pedestrian and landscaping, it was an impressive read. It really was, and I really want to take time to commend that work. I would just say though, the only thing that came to mind as I was looking through that work is, like, I saw some of the future outreach, like Urban League, for instance, the Black Chamber in terms of the East Side. I would really encourage folk who are doing that work to reach out to Councilwoman Nice, because there are some groups on the East Side that, especially around like where East Side Pizza and Kindred Spirits and where all that development is kind of taking place, there's groups of those developers and folk who I think if we missed the opportunity to engage them because of their proximity to 23rd and MLK, I think we would, and I don't think they're as plugged in with the Chamber, for instance, or Urban League. So I think Councilwoman Nice would be a.
We'll continue that. We have talked to Councilwoman Nice,
Okay.
but we'll continue that dialogue.
Okay, thanks.
I believe the first meeting is tomorrow.
I believe so, yeah. Oh,
Thank
sorry,
you.
Monday.
Monday.
Thank you, Katie. So the first meeting of that is on Monday, okay? Okay, first meeting's Monday, Ralph Ellison Library. Okay, any other questions or comments? Not, I take a motion in a second. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I do have a question. Is that meeting, the meetings, are they posted somewhere? So maybe I could share them on
We're getting
social
ready.
media?
We're getting ready to issue basically a press release
Oh,
that
okay.
has all those listed.
Okay, thank you.
Motion in a second to approve the amendment. Please cast your votes.
I'll make sure you get that.
Motion passes, thank you. All righty, moving on to item 3, discussion items. Mr. Todd?
We don't have anything else.
Okay. Maps for Citizen Advisory Board Subcommittee reports. Any reports from subcommittees? Okay. Just want to say thank you for all your work. We're really digging into the meat of it. So I know each of you is giving your time and your talents and your thoughts. So very much appreciated and necessary for our process to work. Moving on to item 5, update status Maps 4 program.
We have a lot going on behind the scenes. We've talked about a lot of it, parks and the BRT. And don't forget that we're also in the middle of youth centers and the design right now on that. Palomar is ongoing. I shouldn't have mentioned those because I know I've left out all the others, but we've got a whole lot going on right now.
Yes, we do. Okay, moving on to item 6, comments by board, staff, or citizens. Do we have any citizens that have signed up to speak today? No? Okay. Any other comments by staff?
I want to make one point is that July 4th
Yes.
has kind of fouled up our meetings here,
Right.
so note that we have moved the entire group of July meetings 1 week.
Back.
Because I knew some of you were gonna be on vacation or at the lake or whatever. So those have moved to the next week.
Right. So our Citizens Advisory Board meeting will be on the 13th. So Thursday, the 13th, so back up for the Tuesday and
Yeah, 12th
Wednesday
and 11th,
meetings.
yeah.
Right. Don't look concerned over there. Okay, any other comments by board?
Yeah, I just wanted to welcome in official capacity Chelsea Banks representing Ward 2. And just to say briefly, I met Chelsea during my first election. I reached out to each of the historic commercial districts in Ward 2. I wanted to get to know what their needs were in addition to knocking doors. I didn't know Chelsea, and we sat together at what is present day Pony Boy, and I just sat there and listened to what her vision was for her neighborhood, Jefferson Park, and for Uptown. And I was almost like, well, I don't have to say anything. Like, this is wonderful. And she's just been an advocate ever since I have known her, and that was in 2018, that summer. So it really just, I'm excited to see her because she thinks intersectionally. So I think she's gonna have such wisdom to give us on each one of those 16 projects. And I just really want to thank her for coming on board, and then also to thank Ali Shin for guiding us over the last 2 years. She's going to be moving in a year, but it's very important for me to thank Ali for getting us through this, and I really appreciate the board welcoming Chelsea.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments by board? No? Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you all. Have safe and happy 4th of Julys, and we will see you on the 13th of July. Item 7, we are adjourned. Thank you.